Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle. Today I wanted to share with you guys a new book I found, kind of a book recommendation. So this is Love in the Time of Homeschooling, A Mother and Daughters in Common Year by Laura Brody. I randomly found this book browsing the shelves of my library, and I think it's a wonderful book, and I really want to talk about it with you guys here. You know, I've read a lot of homeschooling books, you know, The Brave Learner, Wild and Free, a slew of others, and I think a lot of them are very inspirational, a lot of them are helpful, but a lot of them don't really get into the more difficult things about homeschooling, which I think this book does an awesome job of it. So the premise of the book is, it's obviously a true story, about a woman who decides to take her 10-year-old daughter out of school for a year, kind of what she refers to as a sabbatical. You know, her daughter's just burnt out from the test taking and the worksheets and the homework, so she wants to give her the opportunity to learn at home for a year to see if that helps. Now, the beginning of the book starts out talking about, you know, her daughter in kindergarten and starting out young, and how her daughter was always a little different and did things differently. The teachers would often say she was often in her own world and she needed to spend more time in our world, which I thought was relatable, you know. And she talked about her daughter was bored in kindergarten and tired and the homework. So just very relatable things that we all go through if we decide to enroll our children in public school education. And you know, she goes into how her daughter learned differently, and her kindergarten teachers realized that, and she went through different testing processes for, you know, ADHD, autism, and it pretty much just came down to her daughter was just, you know, different. She was learned differently. She had a different attention span than the other children. And then it goes into, you know, some of the authors growing up, how she was taught, how her home life was, and different things like that. And she gets to the point where her daughter just literally hides in the house because she doesn't want to do her homework when she's 10 years old. And she gets to the point where she's like, you know, this isn't right. I have to try something else. So she approaches the idea of homeschooling, and of course her friends and family think she's crazy. And you get all the common, you know, what about socialization? All those questions you get when you talk about homeschooling. And her husband thought she was crazy and that teaching her daughter would just drive her insane, which I thought was funny too. But she does it. She pulls her out and decides to keep her home for a year and teach her. And the bulk of the book is pretty much that year of them together and what it was like. And of course, like all homeschooling journeys, it starts off with a honeymoon period where you think, you know, it's going to be magical, and you have all this ideological ideas of what it'll be. She thought, you know, they'd go on long walks and discuss great books, and most of the time she tried to do that, her daughter would get distracted by like a rabbit running down the road and go explore the rabbit instead of wanting to talk about, you know, poetry or history or anything. And I like that, you know, that's realistic, that we all start out with these ideas of what we think it'll be, and we eventually come to terms with that doesn't always fit with how we teach or how our child learns. So I found that extremely relatable. And the mom goes in to talk about how, you know, and the mom has a PhD and an undergrad from Harvard, so she's well educated. Her husband also has a PhD, so I appreciate that it comes from a family that appreciates higher education and the importance of education. I enjoyed that perspective as well. But obviously the honeymoon period eventually ends, and the mom and the daughter become, you know, frustrated with each other. It's not easy raising kids, let alone teaching your children. And the mom thought, you know, that taking her out of the public school setting would solve the majority of the problem. She thought that was the institution itself was the problem, when actually there was more to it than that, which I think a lot of us, when we bring our kids home, realize too, that it's not just the setting. And she even goes into different things about sibling jealousy. She also has two other daughters, So she kept one of them home, but the other two remained in public school, and just the jealousy of that one-on-one time that the 10-year-old got with and how the other children reacted, which I really appreciate too, because you don't often hear sibling jealousy or how siblings react to homeschooling, at least not in a lot of the books I've read, so I like that. And then there's sections about, she loses her temper. She yells at her kids, and it's extremely frustrating teaching a child, and they're just not getting it for whatever reason. And it's like banging your head on a wall. And it's like, yes, that's how it is sometimes. It's not always magical. It's not always perfect. And it's not always easy, which I really appreciate the author going and talking about these difficult moments with her child, because I think we need to talk more about those difficult moments that, yes, homeschooling can be wonderful, but it can also be extremely difficult and taxing on both the child and the parent teaching. And she sums it up by, people would ask her how homeschooling was going, and she would sum it up by saying it was an academic success, but a maternal failure, which I was like, yes, that's how we feel sometimes. Like, they're learning more at home, but sometimes that parent-child relationship can be strained. And she would often seek out, answers in homeschooling books. And most of them would say things like, well, obviously, if you're having these difficulties, you don't understand your child. You need to spend more time together. You don't get each other. And it's like, okay, I understand that, but it's also difficult. And she goes into about how it's difficult to, although she enjoys teaching her child, it's really giving up your own personal time. And it's a sacrifice on the parental side to take that on. And it's a difficult sacrifice, although it is worth it, yes, 100%. And like she said, her daughter flourished academically, but emotionally it was difficult. And I think we all experienced that in the first year, and the first year is probably the roughest. And things get better, and you do. And by the end of the book, she does understand her daughter better. They do have a better relationship, but it really dives into the difficult parts of learning at home, which I think a lot of books kind of just gloss over. And I like that, she gives an accurate portrayal of what public school education is. A lot of homeschool books kind of don't give the best idea of it, which there are faults in the public school education, 100%. But there's also some good things in it too, some relationships and some things they provide that are helpful for people. So I like that she doesn't really just dog on public school education, but does point out some of the flaws and the things she doesn't like. And then, the end of the book is just kind of the end of their year together. And her daughter does go back to public school after that, and what that transition from going from homeschool to public school, and some of in the book is her daughter's reactions to things, and how, looking back, how she feels about different things. So you get also the daughter's perspective on things, not just the mom's and how everything went. But I think it's an awesome resource out there. There's a bunch of beautiful homeschooling books, inspirational books, like I said, but this is a very realistic book, I think, that makes you feel better, that you're not the only one that, occasionally loses their temper because someone can't learn their multiplication tables. And it gets better, and you do understand each other better. So I highly recommend this book if you're looking for something to read. Thanks for watching, guys.